Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Screen Sermon Podcast. It's episode 29, and we're back in the ring for another version versus version. And if I had a ding 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 sound effect, I would throw it in right there. But welcome back. So it's, as usual, it's the Boon. Hello, everyone. And this week I'm chatting with Inky. Welcome back, Inky.
Let's get ready to turtle! do. Whoops, wrong martial arts franchise. Sorry, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, what a blend, though. And hell, with all the DLC characters that MK has been doing these days, I don't think we're far off from, like, the Image era of the Turtles being in there, because that was a pretty violent comic book, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, the OGs.
Yeah.
You could almost split it up.
Yeah.
Mirage, yeah.
Mirage. Sorry, comic people. I apologize.
Yeah. Image was like the Spawn. I'm forgetting the rest of the characters. Mostly the Spawn one.
Yeah.
Savage Dragon.
There
it is. Okay, that's the other one I was thinking of. I was gonna say you could almost split them up. Put like the black and white turtles in the new MK game. Throw like the full color turtles in like the next Marvel Capcom or something.
Ooh, there you go. Yeah. Because, I mean, hell, they've had their moment in the sun in the fighting game ring. I'm sure it's been more than one, but at the very minimum, they had tournament fighters for the SNES, which I was a big fan of.
Hell yes.
Had a bunch of characters in there. I have no clue where they came from. I feel like they made them up specifically for the video game.
War?
Wait, you're actually going to name drop characters on me?
Yeah, the giant purple dinosaur guy. Dude, I played that game so much. More than most games on the Super Nintendo. I actually just watched I watched like a quick playthrough the other night when I was getting in preparation to watch one of these movies. The soundtrack
I know that some
alone,
of them were real.
Yeah. I mean, they had Chrome Dome, Rat King, of course.
Mm-hmm.
There was one in there, actually. We'll get to it because she's in one of the movies we're here to talk about. I never got to do it because I didn't know what else you had to do. I beat the game with every character you can. And I'm like, it would always say like, oh, but the real villain, the real master has yet to be revealed. And then you just start over. And I'm like, shit, who is it? I already saw Shredder. I already fought the Rat King. I fought all these other dudes. I fought the purple dinosaur, man. Come on, give me something. And I had to just look it up. Like 20 years later, I just looked it up. I'm like, what the fuck was that? You know? And turns out it was a character from, I think, the comics. And then later they put her in a cartoon and ended up in one of the movies we're here to talk about today.
Is it Karai?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I assumed so, but I wasn't 100% sure.
I was trying to bury the lead a little bit, but okay, yes, it was Karai.
So if you haven't been able to tell from all of our, very subtle hints, this week we're bringing the version versus version back, and we're going to be talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Specifically, the ones that we want to compare today are the 1990 original motion picture that came out, and then the 2014 Platinum Dunes Michael Bay produced, I guess, reimagining, something like that. And we're going to compare them. And me specifically, no, I'm going to speak for Inky as well. I already know that we are both coming from a place where we really, really love the 1991 and either didn't see or think that the 2014 sucks. Coming into it from that angle. So I really tried to watch the 2014 one from a different lens to try to compare these films a little more fairly. I tried.
I had not seen the 2014 one until this week. I had no interest in that or Out of the Shadows. I had seen even TMNT, like the fully animated one, I think came a little before these two.
That was in 07, and that was a good one.
Was it? Okay, yeah. Friend of mine and friend of yours, Kevin, who's also a huge Turtle fan, I told him about the episode we were doing. He was like, oh, you should have just done that one. He's like, that's an actual good one. Well, who knows? Maybe later we can compare that one to Mutant Mayhem or something.
I think that's a good idea, especially because we talked about doing 1992 Mutant Mayhem, but then the conversation that we ended up having about it was, let's do live action to live action instead of trying to compare it to an animated film, which made sense.
which we kind of are still.
I was about to say, you could also question that the 2014 one is animated.
We're going live action to like a 50-50 at best.
And so let's, give a little bit of a background, I guess, for those of you who are uninitiated. Check out the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The media franchises all over Paramount, so folks that have Paramount Plus can access it. Essentially, it started as a comic book series put out by Mirage, which is a kind of second tier, I guess you would say, comic book publishing company, kind of in the same vein as a Dark Horse or Image.
Even smaller though, Eastman and Laird literally started it themselves. Eastman and Laird being the creators of the comic book.
I didn't know that about them. Okay, so I guess another tier down even. Okay.
Yeah, they started it with a tax return and like a loan from an uncle, as most great artistic prospects do.
And so from what I got a full disclosure as far as the comic books are concerned, never read any of them. Interested, probably something that I need to do, considering my fandom of the franchise over the course of my life, in and out of interest. But I've heard that the original series, like the Mirage comics, were incredibly, not incredibly so, but very violent. With lots of kind of blood and guts, and they weren't shy about death and things like that. Have you ever seen the comic books?
Yeah, I've read some of the originals. I also read some of the more aimed for kids, full color ones when I was a kid. I found out about those origins of the black and white comics much later. I think probably late high school, and a friend of a friend kind of told me like, "Oh man, they're so fucked up." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then, as the internet was continuing to kind of blossom and more things were ending up on it, I ended up looking them up, and there was some site I'd never remember the name of had put these like very small kind of thumbnail-y things you'd have to kind of zoom in on to read.
Yeah.
And in addition to the violence and all that, that the turtles drink beer, they smoke cigarettes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was. You could definitely read like that influence from like the Frank Miller side of what they were drawing on.
Sure.
Because it was largely it started as just a pure joke. I forget which one,
right.
If it was Eastman or Laird. They drew a turtle and they kept kind of adding on to it, like a little telephone game. And then they're like, hey, what the hell? Why not? Let's make this, And so they were really riffing a lot on like Frank Miller's Daredevil, but also some of Ronin, and then, the other teenage books of the time. New Mutants, I think even Teen Titans, maybe. Yeah, so that was the big soup. But the Miller stuff really reads through in those ones. And honestly, I feel like reads through a lot in the earlier film we're here to talk about.
It makes sense too that a lot of it is pulled from Daredevil because of the kind of like satirical elements that they, the renaming of things or the kind of homage to things that you see with characters, which we'll get to in a little bit. The hand is
now the foot. Yeah. Stick is now Splinter.
Exactly.
Somebody did. I forget who did this, and I don't think it's quote unquote canon, because they change up the fucking canon so often in comic books. But like the idea was that the same slime or goop or ooze or whatever it was that blinded Daredevil seeped down the sewer and created the turtles. Somebody wrote that into something. And I forget if it got pulled or if it was never actually fully quote unquote canon or something. But somebody was really trying to connect those two worlds.
Yeah, it definitely read. I definitely read an article that was talking about that there was supposed to be a connection, or they were supposed to exist in the same universe or something like that.
Who knows?
Are you there?
All it would take is for,
you are.
all it would take is Disney and Paramount to just, decide to make money together, and we might have that, honestly. But
yeah. And so we want to start out by talking about in these VvVs in the past, we generally have a tendency to kind of start with the writing and the story. And so I kind of wanted to start angling us in that direction, if that's okay with you. And so the 1990 film is kind of dovetailing off of this huge media juggernaut that was created, the original animated series that started in 1987. I forgot to mention that the comic books, the original Mirage comic series, I think started in 1984. Does that sound right to you?
83 or 84, yeah.
Yeah. And so they take this incredibly violent comic book about 4 turtle brothers who happen to be ninjas trained by a rat. And they decide to make this plucky children's cartoon out of it in 1987. And it, of course, blows up. It's huge. I think the thing that comes out of it the most is the toys. I mean, the incredible amount of Ninja Turtle action figures that came out in the late 80s and the early 90s. I mean, it was incredible, the amount of merchandise you could get with the Turtles on them.
I think I read it was close to 400 figures.
Wow. Jeez.
If I remember right, not including like the vehicles and, you know, like all the little accoutrement kind of toys as well. And if I am remembering right, I'm going to say that a lot because I'm an aging nerd. But I want to say that it was the transition from the comics into the cartoon was toys. Like they got this very small deal where they made these like pretty primitive, kind of almost like pewtery kind of figures as some way of like, hey, let's get some more bread off this thing, you know, this little underground hit.
Sure.
Weird fact, and again, this could be could be apocryphal, but the comedian Gallagher, the guy that would smash the fruit and whatnot, he claimed that he was originally ushering these guys towards making either the toys, the TV show, something. He had some kind of backing on it or was representing them and was still pretty pissed off about this in like the late 2000s or whatever this interview happened.
Wow.
And I forget, I think Eastman and Laird said like, yeah, we did get to know him. We talked a little bit, but it wasn't that much involvement.
Yeah.
I think, again, it just sounded kind of like just a sour guy that was, you know, bitching about how the money he didn't make.
I like your use of an adjective to call him sour when he's the guy that smashes fruit.
Oh, I didn't even mean to, but yeah.
I still liked it.
He's on that side of the citrus spectrum, you know what I mean? So.
So yeah, I think that you and I and, you know, plenty of people in our age bracket and kids that we knew, you know, in our age bracket and things like that, we all grew up with the turtle figures. And, you know, hell, I remember having, you know, ones that were absolutely on the wish list, or having to kind of make up my own versions of things because, you know, I couldn't get all the things that I wanted. Like, I remember they had a sewer set, where you had like the hideout and the pipes that kind of go off of it, the water, you know, the water lines that they can walk through and, you know, skate around and all this other stuff. And if you bought multiple copies or multiple sets, you could link them together and make a huge like sprawling sewer system.
Oh, it looks so cool too in the commercials.
Yeah, it did. It looked awesome. And I remember I wasn't able to get it, and so I ended up making it out of cardboard. I made my own sewer.
Nice.
And I also remember I always wanted the Technodrome playset because it was massive. I remember it was just this enormous Technodrome, and the idea of having the final battle taking place in the Technodrome, it just, you know, tickled me. But anyway, wasn't to be, but it was, I mean, I would love to find some figures about, no pun intended, about the number, like the money that they made off of that merch. It's got to be some kind of astronomical number of merchandise sold over the years. And I mean, hell, they're still selling it now, so it's an ongoing, you know, constantly moving number because they're coming out with new stuff all the time.
Well, according to Deadline, this was written in just August of this year. Okay. I thought this was the total of the entire franchise, but it says it was reignited with 1 billion plus global retail sales for 2023.
Oh, for 2023 period.
Well, I'm seeing 1 billion this year.
And so that makes sense because the
Sorry, that's just astounding to me.
It's incredible. I mean, and like you said, the very humble beginnings of this franchise is, two guys drawing a turtle, and then the other guy takes it and he's like, I'm going to make it a ninja. And then the other guy takes it and he's like, I'm going to make his dad a rat, and all this other shit.
Yeah.
And this turns into this global phenomenon where in a single year they sell $1 billion worth of merchandise. I mean, it's insane.
Here's the wild thing. I remember this in around, I think it was about 2016. This is back when I used to work between different grocery stores. I'm sitting there in the aisle kind of throwing some product on the shelf. And this woman with her young kid who's sitting in the little front seat of the cart, or I guess the back seat, whatever it is. And so I kind of backed up, let him through, and the kid, he did the cute thing kids do where he kind of waved at me and I waved back. I said, hey. And he had turtle pajamas on. And I was like, oh, sweet, man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Right on, man. And he kind of high-fived me real quick. And I was like, I stepped back and I was like, damn. Like, from the late 80s when people like you and I were, drooling over the Technodrome and the Blimp toys,
Yeah.
Up to the point where what was that in 2016? Much older. There are still new, very much younger than I, kids out there just getting into this thing. I mean, it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
And never really seemed to take too much of a backseat or a pause in terms of that. Because I know there's been numerous TV shows I've never seen a single episode of that have happened since that original cartoon that you and I watched.
Right. And the new movie that just came out this summer, I mean, they completely rehashed and came out with a new toy line to support the new film and stuff like that. And what I noticed, I think it was in Target or something like that, they obviously have this huge display for Mutant Mayhem, and all of the figures are now made to look like the ones from the 80s and the 90s. They have the very similar look to them, and the weapons look very familiar, and the way that they fit in the hand all looks familiar. And it's just they're really kind of locking in on that nostalgia factor. So parents are going to want to buy these things.
Well, and I think that's why Mutant Mayhem is timed a bit better than, say, the 2014 one. Because me and you we are literally the age of the original Turtle fan. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the thing you kind of want with that, say if it's like the Lego movie, or it's like some of these new versions of the animated Disney films they're doing now live action, some of the newer Star Wars, you hit that thing where it's like, here's the nerd parent then can now take their nerd kid. We're hitting on two levels. Mm-hmm. And that's a smart marketing thing. Same buddy Kevin sent me a picture of those Redux toys that look like the old ones that we were familiar with, and man, I was just like, oh. I try not to. I actively try not to get into too much nostalgia and nerdery, but that was just one I'm like, I am powerless.
Yeah.
I am putty in the hands of these little action figures. But yeah, to that point, though, I think 2014 was just a little bit too in the middle of that, because we older nerds are gonna be very eyebrow raisy about this. You know what I mean? We're just in we're in that kind of midpoint of late adolescent nerd rage.
Yeah.
We also probably don't have kids yet because of the thing I just said, and and the new fans haven't necessarily had a chance to catch up yet. And I mean, hey, it made incredible money. I forget what it made, $250 million or something like that. So obviously people went.
It was a lot.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like it quite struck the same chord that would make lifetime fans the way those earlier various pieces of media did for us in our generation.
Sure. Well, and I'll tell you, when I was in Target, I was incredibly tempted to buy those figures, just because I wanted my kids to have them so I could play with them. And I did, and I took my kids to go see Mutant Mayhem. Oh no, I'm sorry. I took my eldest. I didn't take both of them. And but I mean, that's the very definition of, the nerd dad taking his nerd daughter to go see. It's just we have similar interests in that way. So it was easy to, she was involved after watching the trailer. She was interested and wanted to go see it. So we went and did that. And it was very, it was kind of a moment there where it's like, man, like I went, and was excited about this franchise back then. And now is this something that she's going to carry on? So it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it. And I, spoiler, I really enjoyed that film. So if we ever get to the point where we're talking about that one compared to the 2007 or whichever, I will have nothing but favorable things to say. Maybe not nothing, but mostly favorable things to say.
And bring Lucy on too. Why not?
Yeah. But let's dig into the writing for these two films. So as you were saying, the 2014 film was probably not benefiting from some incredible timing when it came out. Now let's also get something straight. At least before Mutant Mayhem came out, this was the highest grossing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film that was ever made. The 2014 one did make a lot of money. When you look at it in comparison to the 1991, the 1991 they made for $13 or so million, and it had like a $200 and some odd million gross worldwide, so it was a huge success. Which is why
most successful independent film for I looked it up, actually a pretty short amount of time. I thought it was Blair Witch that beat it later.
Yeah.
But by the kind of loosey-goosey definition of independent, I think Dances with Wolves beat it later that year. So
yeah,
that's still pretty damn impressive for a low-budget independent movie about with puppets. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
I agree. What an accomplishment for them. And I mean, the story is great. I mean, the 1991, the story is great. I think one thing, obviously I've seen this movie a million times. I think something that I noticed about this film this time that I've never paid attention to before is that this is Raphael's movie. Mm-hmm. And he's not the lead turtle. He's not April O'Neil. Michelangelo, I feel like, has a tendency to be the most popular turtle amongst, like, I remember kids and stuff talking about Mikey, and he was everybody's favorite because he was the party dude.
Yeah.
With all of those factors taken in, this is Raphael's movie, and I've never thought about that before. All of the major scenes revolve around him, or he is involved in them.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he's the one with the most, I guess you'd say, diverse emotions. He's got the most emotional depth in some ways. Although I say, like, Leo definitely has some as well, You see him lighten up, but he also kind of has to kind of crack down at different times. You see some frustration with him, but not to the level that Raph does. And
sure.
While we're on the story of this one, I mean, that moment still gets me when he comes back after he's fought Casey Jones, and Splinter has to talk to him and puts his hand on his set, and he says, "You choose to fight this enemy alone." Oh, yeah. Man, I still got misty. I mean, this is same with you. I've seen this too many times, but I mean, that part still gets me. And it was, I didn't connect to Raph as much as a kid. He kind of scared me in this one.
Yeah.
With his emotion, I mean,
yelling
even before
and stuff.
that.
Yeah,
even before that, later, after Splinter's been kidnapped and he has that scream and they do the 360 shot. That was so disturbing as a kid. But it was years later when I actually became a teenager, go figure, that I kind of started connecting more to that. Because like you said, I was definitely a Mikey fan as a kid.
Yeah. I think that was common. And it's just, the Splinter and Raph scene, I watched that so much differently than I have over the last 36 years of my life, and, this time it just hits differently because now I'm viewing it from the lens of, this is a scene where a father is talking to his troubled son. And so taking it from the parent angle, like the same as you, like not like openly weeping or anything like that, but it's it's definitely hitting me in a certain place, and it's like, this fucking movie about turtles that fight ninjas is making me feel stuff, and that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't always see a modern film that is mostly meant for kids go to that depth. You know what I mean? Or at least not quite to that level of performance of that emotion. I mean, I'm without kids myself, but I mean, I kind of connect to what you're saying in a different way. You know, I'm like, this is what I would tell, say, my son or my future son or my younger self. You know,
yeah,
I definitely look back and see a Raph in me. By younger, I mean, you know, a month ago. But
yeah, and I mean, it's so yeah. You've got that. You've got the Splinter conversation. You've got his so before and prior to that, of course, he's the one that breaks away from the rest of the guys and goes out to a movie by himself, and he's got this interaction with Casey Jones. You know, he's the one that has this huge emotional outburst when Splinter is kidnapped. He's also the catalyst for why that happens, right? I mean, he saves April when she's attacked in the subway, and him carrying her back to the hideout is what leads the Foot Clan to the Turtles' hideout. So it's his fault. So now you understand why he feels this way. There's guilt there. You know, and then the rooftop scene at the antique store. Fuck, God, this movie's so good. Anyway, the rooftop scene at the antique store, you know, where he's again like battling his feelings and his guilt and stuff by himself. He's the one that ends up getting injured during the battle, and you know, they escape to the farmhouse so that he can recover. Like, it's about his, it's all about him. It's all about Raph. Like until like really the climax of the film, when all the brothers come together again, it's really about Raph up to that point.
Yeah, he kind of just joins back in after they return from the farm, you know, and it's just all the boys together. Going back though, that subway scene when he charges in and he's got both his side back and it's that like POV shot, the intensity of that scream and that wild shaky cam, shaky cam when it had a purpose.
Effective shaky cam.
Yeah, you feel the rage inside this man, or this turtle man. And I mean, just again, like when like what looks like the entirety of the Foot Clan just corners him on the roof, you know, but he's still got like, you know, his little, you know, fuck you kind of sarcasm to throw back at him. Yeah. You must be a study.
That was always one of my favorite
book
scenes.
Of ninja fighting. Good answer. Good answer.
That was always one of my favorite scenes. And when I was a little kid and I was like reenacting and things like that, of course, not the end when he's getting the shit kicked out of him, but the beginning part when he's whipping the tar out of some Foot Clan, you know, that I always loved that scene. There's something about the music that's playing in the background. And just I love so we're going to get to technical by accident here, but I love the sound effects in that movie when people get punched and kicked. I always thought it was very, you know, effective sounds. You know, really makes you feel it. And just, the scenes, the composition of the scenes, and like the way that they're put together, how they tie that whole movie together, so great. And you just, it's so easy to kind of like piece it together like that, where it's almost like levels in a video game. It's like, well, you start at this level and then you move to you remember the farmhouse, and you remember the you know, the battle with Casey Jones in the park, and you remember this, that, and the other, and there's just these individual kind of chunks of the movie that take place in these different settings, and you just hang on to those.
Yeah, it's almost episodic in a way, which it's a part of it. I really appreciate the way they told the story. I mean, it's super pulpy, you know, which is a big influence on what created comic books. And from what I read, I didn't see any exact quotes, so I mean, take it with a grain of salt. But I mean, I can kind of feel the DNA there. It feels like they were tapping a little bit into that Frank Miller influence with this film. Sorry, the dog upstairs is going nuts. He's excited too. He wants us to talk more about Donatello, though. But yeah,
that's right.
And as you're saying too, that's something that back when they had schools for this, they may still, like, they kind of teach you with in comic book writing. You know, it's about that page turn, and so you try to find a way to kind of have a little button on each page or each 2 pages, and again, pulp stories of like those magazines back in like the, I think, 30s, 40s, 50s, with each page or so, each story, each chapter, you want to kind of give them something to make them keep reading. And that's the kind of episodic part of it. And it goes to what you're saying. I mean, video games, a lot of earlier video games do this too, where there's like each level is sort of like a scene, you know?
Yeah.
And you would get that with like Ninja Gaiden or some of the beat 'em ups. I feel like even the Turtles beat 'em ups did some version of this, where you'd finish the level. I think the Simpsons game did it. But then you get like a short, like animated sequence that carries you story wise over into into that next level. So you're like, oh shit, now we gotta chase your Shredder over in the blimp. Now we gotta catch him up on top of the fucking Empire State Building or whatever it was. It's been forever since I played Manhattan Project, so forgive me.
Yeah. Now we're on a train and it's the past, you know.
Yeah, there it is.
Stuff
Turtles
like
in
that.
Time. Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, and then it all builds up to this, like you said. Well, I mean, you were talking about it from a game perspective, but that film builds up to this amazing showdown with Shredder on top of a building, and like how much of a badass do they make Shredder look, you know, and just the way that he's presented, and like I appreciate the fact that whole movie you don't really see him do anything specific. He doesn't touch anybody, he doesn't punch people, he doesn't fight anyone. You don't really get a sense of how dangerous Shredder is other than how he dresses until the end. And boy does he throw down. I mean, we've seen the 4 turtles, you know, having their way with, you know, the Foot Clan and things like that throughout the course of the film and showing their prowess as fighters, and then at the end Shredder is just tearing into them.
Yeah, it's a great I love that about the film.
What a badass intro for that guy.
When he just drops down.
Well, I was sorry, but earlier in the film when he's when they do that kind of overhead shot of him and he's walking through the doorways and there's all that percussion is going on.
The simplest little technique too, where his shadow's before him, but he's got like a 90-foot shadow, and he's got this like crinkly, like shiny garbage bag cape. And again, all Tatsu has to do is just reveal his shoulder blades, and it's all just like, it's super simple, but it works so well. Yeah. And then but I mean the voice on that too, like the voice actor they got for it, I don't have his name right handy. I mean, all of that, and again, like you say, we only get these small scenes with him up to the end. So they really save the villain in that, which I really appreciated. You know, it's not like, I mean, this way can work too. I was just watching some of Secret of the Ooze, waiting before we get on mic. It's much more of that story you think of where it's like, now the heroes, and now the villain. What's he doing next? Oh, he's got this plan, and he's, you know, moving it forward this way. They really hang Shredder back, and you really feel he feels more like Darth Vader in the first Star Wars in some ways. You know, like where you're like, oh shit, yes. And like nice interplay too of all that stuff we talked about as well with Splinter and Raph, you know, the father to son, and Splinter with the rest of them as well. But and then the way that, you know, Shredder twists and manipulates that kind of fatherly figure to other lost kids, you know, really cool. And again, super simple storytelling, goes way back, but man, does it land, at least for me. It works so well. Definitely.
And I love some of the cool concepts and the ideas that were going on there with like the Foot Clan, and how they recruit teenagers basically in the area. They start them out as thieves. You know, they go all across the city and just are stealing merchandise. They're building up this empire, and I don't even know for what. Like, we never really got to the point where we understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
I had to ask myself that too. That's the kind of grown-up question, you know, as people who have to manage bills and finances and shit. We're like, but to what end, you know?
What is Shredder trying to do with all this money?
What's the 5-year plan, Shredder? Like, we got stereo equipment, we got a bunch of Burger King, we got like some skateboard ramps. What are we pushing towards here?
Right, all these arcade cabinets. Like, what is this?
Yep.
And then, you know, some of the more like elite members of this like teenage like hoodlum group that they've assembled, they go into more formal martial arts training, and then if those, if they make the cut, they get their mask and they actually become full-blown members of the Foot Clan. And I love that whole idea.
That's another one of that too. That's one of my favorite line reads ever.
Well, and this is such a the years that you and I have known each other, and the years that you and I have hung out, doing X, Y, and Z, and like how much have we quoted this film?
Too much.
Just constantly.
Between you, me, buddy Kevin, and then our other buddy Chris, his wife Jen, she can go toe to toe with any of us. I remember actually too, because California Josh, one time when it was just me and him over at your place when you lived out here, and you popped on. I think you bought like the first two, or maybe the trilogy on a DVD set, and you popped it on. We watched the first two, and me and you knew almost every line. Yeah. If one of us didn't, the other one did. And Josh was just like, this isn't very fun. It was kind of fun at first. It's not really fun anymore, guys. Like 1.5 movies in, and you guys may as well just be doing a stage production of this shit.
Little did he know we were having fun.
Yes.
But we get lost in the shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the way that April is written in this film. She's written to be, she's less damsel-y. I'm not saying that she doesn't require saving, because that definitely happens, but she's still a rounded character. She has motivations. She's not just like a cardboard cutout that's there to serve this purpose. Like she actually feels like a character. Judith Hoag, I feel like, did a great job in the role. I don't know. There's something about the 1990 version of the film that seems timeless to me. And it seems, of course, very appropriate to the time that it came out, but it's still a movie that, despite its technical shortcomings, you could go back to it at any time, and it would still just kind of give you all the things that you're looking for out of a Ninja Turtles film.
Well, and the thing I think about the most about this movie, this is more of like what we do after we've gotten through the categories, but I'll just throw it out now, is like I give them a lot of credit for not just the emotional stuff we had mentioned or some of the intensity of some of those scenes, but also just the way they portray the city and the story that's being told in it. Because yes, there are turtles that'll throw out like, little one-liners like they're comedians from the 50s or something.
Yeah.
But so much of the rest of it is so dark and grimy, Yeah. That's what I always say. This movie really teed me up well for like earlier Martin Scorsese movies, and even like, damn it, I'm forget his name. The guy that did King of New York and a lot of other like really, really overly intense New York films. Anyways,
now I'm blanking on his name.
All the dirty, grimy, nice New York films, Spike Lee, right. Even to a weird degree, but yeah, and I give the creators at large a lot of credit, because I felt that so much in the opening of this, when it's just you open on the city, the skyline, and it has that really like eerie music, and we go between April's news report, we see like the copies of the New York Post going around, and there's this very nice sequence of like people passing wallets back and forth, emptying whole trucks,
Yeah.
Again, it feels like, damn, if the turtles didn't show up, I would totally believe this was just like some 1980s crime movie,
Right.
I'm waiting more like for Al Pacino to show up at this point.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a Ninja Turtle. He should have been Shredder.
Oh my god, that would have been amazing.
Money cannot buy the honor you have bought here today. That's not even Pacino, that's just a terrible Italian accent.
Wow.
Yeah, there it is. Why do you want this
Abel
O'Neill
Ferrara
down?
was
Because she's got a great ass. Abel Ferrara, thank you. That's who I was thinking of.
Yep.
That's what I want to see next. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's still alive. Abel Ferrara's TMNT.
Oof.
Yeah.
I'll be there For
Raph
sure.
just brains a dude into the concrete.
Which would really kind of get us back into the Mirage comics, if that's what's going to happen.
We're taking it back. Why not?
It might as well. So let's. I mean, we're going to have an opportunity to go back. We always end up circling back to writing in the other categories anyway. Let's talk more about the 2014 film. So here's one thing that I can say off the top is I watched both films with my wife. Mm-hmm. And she told me specifically that she was very entertained by the 1990 film. Now, that may have been her just talking about her watching me watch it because of how much I enjoy it. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure. But she also wanted to be very explicitly state she fell asleep during the 2014 movie, specifically during the climax of the film. It had just lost her at that point, and it's about an hour and 40 minutes or something like that, and it was too much of just not being invested, not feeling like you're invested, and that's kind of what I got out of it.
I honestly, I felt similar. It took a lot of work for me to really watch the whole thing.
Yeah,
and it's effort. Yes, yeah. I mean, you said this, I think at least a couple different times, and I forget if you were quoting or this was your own original thought, but one of the worst things you can do as a movie is be boring. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing: there are different paces, tones, moods to movies. Some movies are supposed to be very slow, Yeah. Say very somber. Sometimes that's what you're trying to get across. I think it's especially bad if it's a boring film that's supposed to be either A, exciting, B, funny, or C, entertaining in some other kind of a way,
Yeah.
And man, this one, it took me a few pauses and breaks and just trying to get back into this or find some kind of an end.
Yeah. And this one I can say is it was produced by Michael Bay. It was put out by Platinum Dunes, which I think is Michael Bay's production company, right?
Yeah, because they did all those horror remakes a little bit earlier than this that most people hated. I only saw the Texas Chainsaw. I know it's not as good as the original, but I didn't think it was terrible.
Yeah. It was a fine remake. It was a fine but unnecessary remake.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Because the original is incredible. So why remake it?
It's perfect. I'll just say it right now. Yeah. It's a perfect film.
Yeah. Why remake it? I mean, I don't know. But they did, and it was fine. But it wasn't what it was. It wasn't the original.
Well, I heard a journalist, I guess he had interviewed him as they were starting to put those ones out. And I guess off mic or, off the record. He said something about
off the record. Make a record of that.
Oh man, this episode is going to go way too long if we keep doing this. But apparently Bay said to the journalist when he asked him about the original, he said it doesn't hold up, right? And the journalist was like, see you, man.
Yeah, I feel like you'd be skinned alive for saying that. Imagine him at a convention or something, just dropping that. He'd never make it out of Hall H.
No.
Oh man. So
there'd be a nerd with a hammer waiting behind the curtain to just put him on the floor.
Close a big steel shutter door behind us.
Who put the shutter door there? I don't know, man. It's Comic-Con. Things just happen.
That's a hell of a cosplay. You bring your own shutter door. So the 2014 film, I think one of the big missteps is right off the bat. You come to realize this is April O'Neil's movie. Yeah, and it's all about her, and it's all about her contrived connection to the Turtles and Splinter as a whole. And I mean, I think that's something worth talking about too. Let's look at the two origin stories here. We'll stick to the 2014 one. In this universe, April is the child of a scientist, which is fine because that's digging into the IDW line, I think, where April isn't a journalist. As a matter of fact, I think that was invented for the cartoon show, if I wasn't because for the Mirage one, she wasn't a journalist, right?
Yeah, no, I think she was like a lab assistant originally, and then they made her a reporter in the cartoon, yeah.
So it fits. It stands to reason that you want to associate April with science, because in most of the comic lore she was, and it was more of an invention of the cartoon show that she's a news reporter. Great. I'm all for that. The daughter of a scientist, whatever, that doesn't really matter. But then you come to find out that the Turtles and Splinter at large are actually her pets. And she's the one that named them. And she's the one that got them out of the lab when there's a fire. And, she's the one that gets them out of there and actually pours them down into the sewer and stuff like that. And they they have all this connectivity between April and the Turtles to the point where they're forcing this sibling concept that April is their long-lost sister, basically. And I honestly, I couldn't even give you exactly what Shredder... I've completely... It wiped completely out of my memory. Like, how did Shredder even get involved? Like, what was Shredder even doing there? What was his connection to anything, or his connection to the Turtles? Was there any? I don't even think there was any.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it was William Fichtner's character. Who's an actor I generally like. I know we'll get into acting next, but he that's more things of Dora. And like, boy, there's a lot of people working on this, but there's just something rotten from the start that's just making it really hard to actually appreciate a lot of that. And I think some of it does come down to that. I don't think, honestly, making April more central to the story, or connecting her into the history of the Turtles, that's not a bad move. But to me, I'm like, just make her a scientist then.
Yeah.
Maybe she's a scientist and she has like a video series she does, and that's kind of like a small connect to like the journalism angle. And as she's, investigating this on her own, as she's like maybe finishing her PhD or something, or just working at like some kind of she's working over at Columbia or something, in their biology lab, she finds these guys. Just a lot of different choices that could have been made. I mean, because as it was, I mean, here's a weird take. I mean, I know, again, we'll get into acting later. I really didn't mind Megan Fox in this. But there were a lot of performances that I thought, again, I'm like, these would be fine in a different movie.
Yeah.
This movie really doesn't... This movie really never knows what it is completely. And to your point, too, like the use of Shredder, I mean, he's more just like muscle in this case.
Yes. He's an enforcer for Sax.
Yes. The main villain of the film is William Fichtner, who, again, I like and can play a great scumbag, But your main villain is a scientist that no one who's ever watched or read or played a game in this series, has any idea who he is.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Shredder's just over here to kind of pop out and just, tear ass. I mean, not really, of course. It's a kid's movie, so he never lands much of a punch.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the foot, it's just like we're introduced to them first, but then it's this, I don't know, it keeps shifting. Just keeps shifting. That's the best thing I can say about like the storytelling at large. I'm just like, I don't know. Like you never give me enough chance to actually get what you're going for until you switch again. This is just right. I should appreciate this, but this is like complete ADHD type filmmaking.
Yes. Oh my God. The attention, like, all right, we got to cut and show it from this angle. We got to cut and show it from this angle, or we got to cut and we got to move to the interior of the building now. And it's like, why? Why do we have to move so much? Why? It's like I'm blinking. And every time I blink and open my eyes again, we're looking at something different. I don't want that. I can't. All of this amazing action that you're trying to show me through CGI, I can't see any of it.
Well, and there's versions of that. I mean, I say this on a lot of our episodes, but again, there are movies that are that fast-paced and change tack that quickly that do work. But in this case here, they spend enough time to make you think you should care about some of these other pieces, like the character elements, whether it's April, with Splinter talking with the Turtles, with this connection to William Fichtner's character and all that. But then they don't.
Yeah.
even when they do kind of like, hey, look at this, now you're supposed to care about that. That's what it feels like somebody's got their hand on the back of my head pointing me in different directions. You know? Like it's Clockwork Orange, but there's 17 screens and I just keep getting pointed in different directions, like, care about this now care about this. And I'm like, I don't yet.
Yeah.
Give me something more to care about, you know, let me sit with the character or find something more than a very generic kind of arc for most of these characters, you know, if there even is like half an arc for most.
Yeah, I mean, look at Karai, who is kind of introduced as Shredder's lieutenant or second in command in the film. She does absolutely nothing in this movie. Nothing. She's barely in it. It's like, why introduce this character where I'm supposed to care that you're in this movie? You're clearly a callback to the comics. You're a named character. But you do nothing. And evidently there was supposed to be a fight scene between her and April. But Megan Fox found out shortly into filming that she was pregnant. And so they had to cut a lot of her action stuff.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's not the writing team's fault, you know, or whatever. But, I mean, what they did to fill in those gaps, she just ended up falling by the wayside. And it's like, well, then why didn't you cut her entirely? Because I feel like that could have been done. And the Foot Clan is an embarrassment. They're not ninjas. They're like a paramilitary group.
Yeah, it felt very almost like late 2000s more than, say, like early teens, where it's like everything has to be a little bit somewhere between, like, yeah, it's all very special forcey looking, you know? Yeah. I use that with heavy air quotes.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this isn't as fun. And again, it's in everything, so it really doesn't land that well.
Yeah. And like the Turtles have super strength in this, but not all the time. Like, it's very inconsistent.
Dude, they throw a damn Connex in that early scene. And I'm like,
yes.
Oh, Jesus.
And they wantonly, like, it is very much a... like, they throw these foot soldier guys around with very little care for whether or not they die. Like, one of them gets thrown to a moving subway train window and out the other side. Like, that guy's dead. There's no way he lived through that. So these turtles are absolutely... Yeah, like, these turtles are murderers. They're not afraid to murder.
Well, and then they joke about it right after, like nothing, like it didn't even matter to him. Like, I think they even say something like when the dude's head hit the concrete or something like that.
Yeah.
So we weren't too far from the Abel Ferrara one, I guess. No.
There you go.
But yeah, and again, it was just more inconsistency tone-wise.
Right.
Like the jokes, I'm like, nope, that was actually, like, if you address it, now it seems more awful, you know? If you make a joke on that as you address it, now it's doubly awful.
Yeah.
And again, like, that's something that stresses. Well, I know the humor in all the older ones that we watched is kind of corny. I mean, it's calling back way further back than, like, to what any humor was like for us kids necessarily. Actually, it was kind of par for the course. If you look at a lot of the cartoons at the time, a lot of the writers were still doing a lot of jokes from, like, the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Very, you know, Three Stooges up to, like, Laugh-In maybe.
Yeah.
But conversely, I mean, it feels almost inadvertently satirical and partly intentionally satirical in a weird way that kind of just works for me.
Yeah.
Up to this one here, it's just like somebody, like, I don't know how popular every app was back in these days. Somebody just went through social media, you know, or looked up a list of catchphrases. Yeah. On some kind of website, and then just like found a way to try to pepper it all in the 2014 one, that is. And it's just, that's the part of it, like, of everything that feels the most like cash grabby to me. Yeah, more so than the one where they're saying tubular and cowabunga and such, you know.
Stuff we can put on shirts.
Yeah. Because again, it was kind of silly and just a little bit knowing in that, you know, like the way the Simpsons would sell their merchandise. Not quite the same degree, but the new one just had so little heart to me, I guess, which is a weird thing to say. Kind of pretentious, but I mean it, you know, like it just didn't have heart in any direction or belief. Yeah, it
felt soulless. It felt absolutely soulless. It felt like it was trying to cash in on the rise of the superhero film, as that kind of started to blow up in 2008 with Iron Man and stuff like that. I felt like this was just another comic property that they could try. And plus, I do feel like TMNT is always good for a quick cash grab. It's like, let's reboot that again,
Sure.
or let's try to bring that back and make another TV series or make another movie or something like that. The kids always end up buying that merchandise up until the show gets canceled and we have to take it out of Walmart or whatever. So, these aren't even necessarily 100% appropriate for who I would think of as being the target audience, those kind of elementary age school kids, because this was a PG-13 film.
It was. I didn't even bother looking at the rating. I just assumed PG.
It was PG-13, which actually makes sense because I do think that the violence in this one, which is so funny, compared to the 1991, which ran into some issue, which we'll get into about Jim Henson. But anyway, the 2014 one, the violence in it is more, and I don't know how else to put it, but like mean-spirited. Like when Shredder, kind of shows his prowess against one of the Foot Clan guys, like he beats him to where it looks like he beats him to death.
In an earlier scene, we see, and this is something I kind of clocked in both of them. When you give anything or anyone in a kid's property a blade weapon,
yeah,
like it's not going to get used very much. At least I thought so.
Right.
Because there's an early scene in the 2014 one where we see Leo slash at a dude, and it's from behind Leo, and the dude goes down. It's not one of those what you're used to where they miss and then he kicks him.
Yeah.
Or he throws the swords and it goes on either side of the dude's head and then he kicks him.
Yeah.
Like he just slashes at a dude. I'm like, I think Leo just like decapitated a guy. And more to your point too, like with Shredder with his like super Swiss Army gauntlets.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, Jesus. Like how would you give him this kind of weapon when we know he's never gonna and they give you like a couple of close calls with the Turtles and Splinter. But I'm like,
and that's another thing too. The Michael Bay stink is all over that thing. They turned Shredder, who is a badass martial artist, who has a bunch of blades on his outfit, more or less, that he utilizes in combat, and they turned him into a fucking transformer.
I didn't even think about that till now, but you're totally right. Well, and in the 91, his main weapon that he actually uses is a spear, and he wields it very well. But those plain two, they're just sort of, longer Wolverine claws minus the middle one, are pretty badass,
Yeah.
And again, saving him up, we don't know that he won't go off and kill somebody.
Right.
We've seen his lieutenant basically almost kill a kid. And apparently, the original way that scene was shot, he did kill that dude.
Yeah, I heard that too. I heard that the French and German versions of the film, he does die, according to like the narration or something like that.
They added some ADR of like, he's going to be okay to our version. But no, they had Tatsu just go murder a teenager because he was pissed.
So yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that is the tall and skinny of the issues with the 2014, the writing that's done in the 2014 one. It's this tonally, you're thinking it's this darker thing, it's more violent, it's more mean-spirited, yet they're trying to punch it up with all this very modern humor. Michelangelo is all about like the cat videos on the internet and all this other stuff, and they're beatboxing in an elevator and shit like that, just trying to appeal to a certain aesthetic.
Okay, I will say that scene is pretty cliche. We've all seen a version of that where it's the action and then the quiet. I think Illumination likes to do that scene, but it got me. That was the only thing in this movie that made me laugh.
Yeah.
Where they're just kind of chilling there. And at first I'm like, okay, I've seen this before. And the way it keeps kind of growing with each one as they all kind of start doing it, I'm like, okay, this is hilarious, actually. Warmed my heart a bit. And I guess this will go more to effects, but one more scene, since I don't want to just completely pillory the thing. I mean, there's a sequence later on, and again, very effects driven, that also got me. I will say those were the two pieces of this film I really enjoyed. But yeah, to your point, like as well, the humor just, it never lands. It's trying to be modern, but again, this is post Iron Man. Iron Man's a funny movie.
Yeah,
because they had a funny writer and they had a funny performer. This movie has funny performers.
Yeah,
you know, like Will Arnett, one of the funniest fucking people
hysterical.
You can put on film.
Yes.
And he struggles.
Yes.
That's a good sign that your jokes suck.
Yeah. Will Arnett is very much like in a box in this one. And it's just like, let him out. Like, let him loose.
Let him improvise, for Christ's sake.
Definitely. And I thought I love that. You know what? Fuck it. We're going into acting. Or into performances. We'll circle back in a second. But
no, let's go right now. Chapter 2, right. Performances.
I thought it was a cool idea that they brought Vernon from the cartoon show into one of the films. I was like, cool. Like they're kind of paying off some of that fan service. And they switched him up a little bit. Like he's not quite as antagonistic as he is in the cartoon. He's more of a kind of a bumbling friend who has an interest in April romantically, and of course it's unrequited, but fine. But yes, like the fact that you have this brilliant comedic actor playing Vernon, which also from a casting decision, I thought that was a great casting decision. But he's so on a leash that he ends up not really being funny at all. And it's like, how can you waste Will Arnett in a bumbling friend role? Like, I feel like he really should have shined there and probably been one of the best parts of the movie. Like, you can look back and say the CG was bad and, you know, what were they thinking with the designs of the turtles and X, Y, and Z? But you know what? Will Arnett was really funny in that movie. But you can't even say that.
Nope. Well, and some of those jokes and passes that like he and Mikey make towards April, they're somehow creepier than the versions of this in the 90s. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, ugh. That was another part too where I'm just like, I keep kind of getting this bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Since we're on performances, though, too, I mean, I guess we can kind of reverse since we're just transitioning straight through in 2014's fashion. But yeah, I mean, like the voice cast, I never knew how to pick out which turtle was quite which besides Raph, you know, because they always give him a little bit more differentiation. And checking the X-ray as I was watching it, I watched it on Amazon. Like, I know these actors, and again, I've seen them do good work in other things.
Yeah.
But it's so hard for me to pick out which turtle's supposed to be doing what. Like Mikey has those little bits, you know, those like trying too hard comedic bits. Raph has a handful of things that make him Raph. I mean, Donnie and Leo, I mean, I hate to say it because I do like Johnny Knoxville, but what a weird choice for one. And also just like, I feel like they could have thrown anybody in there.
Yeah.
One thing I will say though, I did like Tony Shalhoub as Splinter.
Yes.
I thought he was pretty solid, actually.
Cool choice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would never have guessed that, but when I heard it, I'm like, I actually kind of like this. And it didn't seem like a weird thing because he was not from Japan, you know?
Right.
He learned about ninjutsu in this case from a book. So I mean, he's a New York rat, so he sounds like a New York guy, and I'm assuming Tony Shalhoub's from New York.
Yeah.
To my Midwestern ears, he sounds like a New Yorker.
That's the one thing that I didn't get too and Ellie, my wife, really struggled with this, is how does a rat, in either case, she actually struggled with it in both movies, so it's really a pick your poison thing. How does a rat look at a book about martial arts and then teach himself how to do it? Or how does a rat in a cage watch his master or his owner do martial arts in the same room and mimic his movements, and then, of course, later on when he's touched by mutagen and becomes more humanoid in shape, he's able to continue to practice the forms that I guess he watched his master do, and then teach turtles how to do it as well. So it is kind of a pick your poison in terms of like suspension of disbelief. How the hell does Splinter become a ninja master?
That I think he just kind of answered it. I just suspend my belief because I'm having such a good time. In case of the earlier one, honestly, that's one of those sillier scenes in the 90s version, the 1990 version, when they have the puppet of young Splinter practicing in his cage. But it's so like silly that I just find it charming as hell.
Yeah.
Like if I looked over, like if I somehow knew like, you know, karate or ninjutsu or something, and I looked over and my pet was in the cage doing the same thing, I would be elated. That would make my life.
So I wanted to dig more into performances with you, but I do feel like it's necessary. Like, should we, you know, kind of make it official in terms of what we thought about the writing? I feel like it was obvious, of course. And then I know we're going to continue to circle back to the writing as we talk about other things.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's clearly the 1990s film gets the point from me in terms of writing. It has the heart that the 2014 one is missing.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it has everything better to me. Scene for scene, it's better. Emotionally speaking, it's better. It picks a character and actually tries to do something with it. And again, it even serves its side characters better. Yeah. I like Casey Jones. I like Casey Jones in the original one better than I like any character in the new one.
Definitely. I love Casey Jones.
He's not the core character. He's not like the cipher, if you will, or the connecting character that brings us between the real world and these people. He's not the villain. He's not even the villain's lieutenant, you know?
No.
But they give him a better, honestly, they serve him better than I think they do literally anyone in the new one. So if there's any proof in the pudding, if there's any proof in the marinara on this pizza, that is, I think, it.
Well, and I love that they don't. I do have this affinity for, like, we don't have to over-explain. We don't have to overdo it. You know, we don't have to have our turtles connected to April through this past, you know, connection in order to make the movie work or something like that. Like Casey, we have no clue why he does the things that he does. You know, he's a vigilante in the city. He dresses up in a hockey mask with a bunch of sports equipment as his weapons and takes down street punks. That's just his thing. I don't need to know why. It doesn't matter. Like, if I want to know about Casey's backstory, I'll read the comics. But in the film, I don't need to know. It doesn't matter. And why he also chooses to be the vigilante with a heart of gold that wants to help the turtles and stuff like that, it's just... He's a guy that wants to fight crime and battle what's wrong in the city, so it made sense. And
well,
he's there to help.
He works in the scenes that he's in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, we don't need to know much. He was a hockey player. I think a hockey player. They never mentioned exactly what sport, but he got an injury and then was not able to. But all the scenes that we see him in, we know what he's about for the most part. And the way he responds to Raph at first, the other turtles, with April, even with Splinter, you know?
Yeah.
And some of the Foot Clan guys when he shows down Sam Rockwell, which I will say that was one part when rewatching it this time. I wish they could have given him, even Splinter, a couple more lines in that scene.
Sure.
Because it's kind of just like a real, like, he just kind of shrugs it off.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's what worked on those Foot Clan guys. They're like, wow, he just thought nothing of us and walked away.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they needed. Who knows? But yeah, that I could have used a few more lines. But yes, I'm also giving my point to 1990.
Definitely. I have a feeling that's going to be a running theme. So at about an hour and 8 minutes, I wanted to see what you thought. I know that we normally do 2 and 2. We usually do the writing and the performances on one part of the VvV and then the technical and effects aspect on the second part. But we've talked a lot, specifically in the intro, I think, and just kind of setting the whole thing up before we got to the writing. Yeah. And so what do you think about cutting this week's episode here and then just doing the other 3 on part 2? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm into it. And honestly, if you'd like, I mean, it's another area where we end up crossing over quite a bit. I feel like technical and effects, at least for these ones, we can kind of combine them if you like.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So if we have prologue and part 1 for here, we can give them parts 2 and 3 next time. You know,
definitely.
Part 3, we go back in time. No.
That's right. On that train that I talked about.
Yes, we record on mimeographs.
So yeah, we're gonna cut right now. So we've talked about the writing. We kind of set everything up. Talked about the franchise as a whole, what it meant to us, and how successful it's been. Let's cut it there this week, folks. We do appreciate you coming out and listening to the Screen Sermon podcast as we step back into the version versus version ring to talk about TMNT 1990 versus TMNT 2014. We will bring you part 2 next week, where we will talk about the rest of the topics at hand and make a final verdict. I'm sure you can already see the writing on the wall, but maybe we will start to come up with some more positive things about the 2014 movie. So with that in mind, again, thank you very much. Please, interact with us in any way that is convenient with you, for you, I should say. You can reach out to us on X. You can reach out to us in the YouTube comments attached to this video, or you could always email us at screensermonpod@gmail.com. Please send us your requests. Send us your suggestions, any feedback, things like that. Would love to get to a point where we're reading, listener emails and stuff like that. I think it'd be really cool. So reach out to us when you can. And, we read all of our comments and all of our messages and things. So would love to interact with you more. So at least for me, yeah. So Inky, thanks a bunch for jumping on and watching these 2 films with me. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me. Also, I already have to correct myself. Mimeographs were not meant for sound. They were basically old copiers. So join us next time when I figure out what old device I was actually thinking of.
All right, folks, we really appreciate it. This is the Boon and Inky, and we'll talk to you next week. All right, so I'll go ahead and do new intro, and we'll jump in there.
Let me look up.
All right. Yeah. I want you to have this thing.
Old sound recording devices. Phonograph. Phonograph? That's it.
Phonograph?
History of sound recording. All right. That's what it's saying.
Phonograph. It's a Def Leppard song.
Acoustical recording. Yep, phonograph. In 1857. Then the phonograph. I'll just go with phonograph or the gramophone. That's even more fun to say.
There you go.
Actually, do you mind if I take the very quick break?
No, please do.
All right, I'm gonna get a new water and take 2 puffs. I'll be right back.
Okay.